What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Well, look, we all know that Michael Jordan is one of the greatest scorers in the history of this game. And a case can be made that he is the greatest scorer that the game has ever seen. He won an NBA record 10 scoring titles. He holds the NBA record for highest scoring average in both regular season and playoffs. He's second, although a very distant second to Wilt, in regular season 50-point games with 31. He holds the NBA record for most 50-point games in the playoffs with 8, twice as many as Wilt. He had, I believe, 173 career 40-point games. And he holds the NBA records for most, I believe, combined 30-point games in regular season and playoffs. And that's considering the fact that he played in 1,072 games compared to a guy like LeBron who's played in now over 1,600, I think 1,622 regular season games and counting. But especially the tail end of Mike's career, he was increasingly playing in an era in the 90s where it was getting more and more difficult to score, especially after the 1995-96 season, right? So, although his career high is 69, if you watch Michael Jordan play, you always kind of wondered how many points could he have actually scored in his prime if he actually just went out there and his goal was just to score. Because, unlike today where a lot of these guys are very stat driven, they have the green light to take 13, 15, 17, even 23 pointers in the game. Although Jordan did perennially lead the NBA in shot attempts, it was still within the flow of the game. But you wonder, in today's NBA with the spacing, with the pace of the flow flow of the game, with the freedom of movement rule, with guys being able to do certain things with the basketball they couldn't even do with Jordan's time, and with the way that defenses are at a handicap because of the changes, you wonder how many points Michael would score. Now, we've seen people like Dennis Rodman, Alonzo Mourning, we've seen others. I think Scotty might have even said something about this before. We've seen others say he would average 45, maybe 50 points a game. Well, Michael Jordan one time said that he could score 100 points in today's NBA. And he said this back in 2010 when the changes to make the game easier to score were underway, but had not reached the point of where it is today. So he said this back during a promotional event for the NBA 2K11 game that he was on. You might remember that's the first one that actually graced his image and reintroduced his character, I think, into basketball as far as a playable character. And it was just talked about how the game has changed since his days, and then made that bold claim, saying, quote, "It's less physical, and the rules have changed, obviously. Based on these rules, if I had to play with my style of play, I'm pretty sure I would have fouled out, or I would have been at the free throw line pretty often, and I could have scored 100 points." And I agree with that because one thing that Michael Jordan was always going to do was give you maximum effort on both ends of the floor. In his prime, Michael Jordan had almost unparalleled energies. Like, I'm telling you, like, the only guy I could think of that, may have exceeded him when it came to the energy to be able to be, that prolific on both ends of the floor was a guy like Wilt. But Mike, in his prime, was relentless on both ends of the floor. And that's what allowed him to lead the NBA in steals 3 times, uh, allowed him to be Defensive Player of the Year 1 year, to make 9 first team all defensive team selections, but also led him to be the prolific scorer of his era. But that relentlessness on defense in today's NBA will get you called for fouls. What was, you know, tough, gritty, physical defense when Mike played, in today's NBA will have you in foul trouble after 2 quarters. We saw that with Bruce Bowen. Bruce Bowen and Roger Bell were two of the best defenders up until around the rule changes. When the first rule changes became apparent after 2000, I think I said the 2004, 2005 season, I think it was. Up until that point, Roger Bell and Bruce Bowen were some of the best defenders in the league, right? But then afterwards, they started getting whistled for fouls for defensive plays that previously would have been called great defense. So they had to back off more. And as a consequence, they weren't as effective defensively. And then you started seeing guys who previously, may have been averaging around 18, 19 points a game. Now we're averaging 22, 23 points a game. Or you start seeing guys who were shooting 44, 43%, now shooting 46, 47% from the field. So there was a definite tick up in offense, but it's only gotten worse. So if Michael Jordan was saying this in 2010, what could he do today? And I don't think that's really a far off thought process to have. I mean, hell, Bam Adebayo, a guy who I don't think would even been a starter in the 90s, scored 83 points last year in the NBA. 83 points. We had an all-star game where a team scored over 200 points. Stephen Curry in one all-star game a few years ago knocked down 16 three-pointers. I mean, to be honest with you, the NBA is starting to get on video game mode. It's that outlandish. It's not the rough and tumble physical defensive basketball that I grew up watching in the late 90s and very, very early 2000s as a teenager and young man. That's the basketball that I fell in love with, the basketball where the final scores, hell, in 2002, in 2000, a high-scoring game was 97-93 final. That was a high-scoring game. And I rather enjoyed that brand of basketball when the high scorer for a team might have had 23 or 25 points. Because that separated the pretenders from the guys who were truly elite scorers. You had to have a bag, a real deep bag, to be effective in that era. Now you got all these guys who are shooting wide open threes, and they're called superstars. But Phil Jackson once said this. If you read about Michael Jordan and this 100-point thing, Phil Jackson once said, if you ever read the Jordan Rules, the Sam Smith book from 1991, he said that even in that era, although he didn't think that Mike would ever put himself ahead of the team, if the right game situation had occurred, and if they're playing the right opponent, let's say the Denver Nuggets from the 1991 season, that I think they went, I want to say a team went like 31-51, but I think they averaged like 120 points a game and 120 points a game. And I think they gave up like 10 times a team scored 150 points or more on them that year. But anyway, if he was playing like against the Denver Nuggets and it was a really close game to win the overtime, He said he could see Mike scoring 100 points then, but it had to be the right situation because Mike wasn't that type of player. I've said this before. Jordan had 10 49-point games, and I believe he had 45 games in his career in which he scored between 46 to 49 points. So what I'm saying is that there were many contests when Mike could have easily dropped 50 if that was his goal, but it wasn't necessary. And also, why risk the unnecessary injury just to pad your stats? But then that was the NBA of that time. The NBA's physicality is so low that, barring some situation where you suffer a non-contact injury, risk of injury via, stepping on someone's shoe, having someone stepping on some, or fall landing on someone's shoe, I should say, or having someone landed, basically contact. That's pretty low now. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you guys think.